Louisiana-style red beans and rice, oyster and artichoke bisque, Louisiana jambalaya. Welcome to Dishing It Out Louisiana Style. I'm Angela Bertone, your host. In Louisiana, we love to cook, we love to eat, and we love to talk about it. In Louisiana, we not only cook with our hands, we cook with our hearts. Some people call that Southern hospitality. We call that a way of life. Are you looking for an easy dish that doesn't take long? You don't even have to thaw out your chicken a day ahead of time or before you get started on your dish? Well, today's meal is going to be for you. We're going to have green beans with new potatoes and chicken, as well as a macaroni and cheese that's not so traditional. It's going to have a little Mexican twist to it. As for those of you who remember me, my maiden name was Quesada before I got married to Mr. Bertone, and my dad's Mexican, so I have a lot of Mexican culture and food, and I like to incorporate that into my Southern Louisiana dishes as well. So we're going to start out with our Louisiana Gold pig fat, lard, bacon grease, whatever you want to call it, and we're going to fry up our chicken. And once I get that going, I'm going to give you our words for the day that's going to be at the end of our show, which is going to be our food for thought. So let's get this going, then I'll tell you our words. This is just good old bacon fat. If you're on a diet or you're trying to keep your cholesterol down and you're not exercising, maybe you could use some peanut oil or olive oil, but the bacon fat really does give it a good flavor. And the good thing about this chicken is this is just frozen chicken tenders, which are breast, and then I also have frozen pieces of dark meat, leg and thigh meat. And I love to keep this in my freezer so that if I want to make a quick fajita or a chicken noodle soup or something like this that's really quick and fast and I forgot to take something out the day ahead of time, it doesn't matter, it works just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and put this chicken in here. I want it to splatter. Okay. Into my chicken, what we're going to do is we're going to season it a little bit before we tell our words. So I have black pepper, and I like fresh ground black pepper. It's a good idea to put it towards the end as well so that you can get that flavor in right at the last second. A little bit of salt. Go ahead and go heavy on your garlic powder. And that's it, those 3 items. Okay. So what are our words for today that we're going to have at the end of the show for our food for our soul? Macaroni, cheese, and green. So macaroni means to be crushed or bruised. Green means to grow or to sprout. And cheese has a few meanings. It means like the boss or the big cheese. It means to smile. It also means to be excellent, like, cheesy. Or the big cheese, or to the top, or to aspire, or even to approve. So it can also have some bad meanings, like as in a cheesy joke or don't cut the cheese, but we're going to stick with the more excellent one, okay? We'll come back at the end of the show. We're going to give you a little bit of food for your soul. Okay, so let's get back to our chicken. What we're going to do is we're going to brown this chicken, and we're going to add our green beans and our potatoes, and it's just going to basically smother with some onions, and that bacon grease is going to mainly be the main flavors for it. So we'll let this fry up till it's kind of golden brown. While this chicken is browning, let me tell you a little story about this meal, and maybe it'll touch you a little bit. One of my best friends hates vegetables, especially if they're crunchy, but due to health conditions, she's usually watching her diet to make sure that it's something that's going to not mess with her blood pressure or her diabetes. So she came over one day, and neither one of us had very much money to run to town and go get something at the local restaurant. So I decided I would cook her green beans and chicken, and she was like, God, that's going to take forever. And of course I reassured her that it wouldn't. So within 30 minutes time, I'd cooked my chicken, green beans were done, the potatoes were tender, and she enjoyed it so much that she actually took some home. And it's one of her favorite dishes now. It's just plain old green beans with potatoes and chicken. So hopefully that little story will encourage you to do the same thing. If they're in season, that's the best thing, but you could even use frozen ones if not. So don't think you can't make it if you don't have garden fresh vegetables. And it's summertime right now, so these potatoes are new potatoes. They're garden fresh as well. Our chicken is done. We're actually not gonna brown it as far as like a crispy brown. I don't even know what I was thinking because that would take much longer. But it's done. There's no blood in it and it's tender. It's chicken tenders and brown thigh and leg meat. So it should be really tender just by cooking the blood out of it. We're gonna add to it 1.5 onions, and I'll show you the size. Here's a half of what's left over, which is gonna go in our macaroni and cheese. So we got 1.5 onions here, large chunks. And basically we're just gonna fry them a little bit. If we don't fry the onion a little bit and get it seared on the edges, once you put the onion in the refrigerator, the next day it's just gonna taste like a boiled onion, which is not real pleasant to my palate. So that's the reason I'm gonna fry the onion a little bit. Once we do that and we incorporate everything else into the meal, we'll add a little bit of water, put a lid on it and smother it, and that's all we have to do. But what we don't wanna do is just drop the onions in and not fry them because it won't taste as good tomorrow. Have my heat on high heat as well. Now while that's frying a little bit, we'll go ahead and chop up our potatoes. I'm gonna leave the skins on them. I'm just gonna cut off the little areas that are brown, that just don't look pleasant. Maybe a couple of the eyes if they're too deep. And then we're just gonna chop them in chunks that are not too large, but not too small, because I don't want them to take a really long time to cook. So that's gonna take probably about 20 minutes. So I'll go ahead and cut that in half, a little bit of that, and see if we could maybe cut it down to 12 minutes of cooking time. So now you can see they're thin as opposed to thick. We'll get all these potatoes in, and the last thing we'll put is our green beans. You can kind of see on the bottom where you got the garlic and the drippings from the bacon, as well as the chicken is a little bit brown on the edges. That's gonna add some flavor to it. That's not a bad thing. If you have the really small potatoes, about this big around, it's nice to leave them whole and just let it cook a little longer, or slice those in half. But I didn't have those, so. Okay, we're gonna add some water to our green beans, put that in our pot, we're good to go. May need to add a little bit. Yep, I do need a little more water. Now you can see it's almost like a pot of soup, but the water's just below everything, so you do need to keep a lid so that the potatoes can actually steam. Now when I salted it a while ago, I only salted enough for the chicken, so we're gonna go ahead and salt it again so that the potatoes and the green beans actually have the flavor too. Black pepper, salt, and my favorite, garlic powder. Always before you serve it, taste it again, just to make sure you have the right salt content. How easy is that? If you want to add a little color, you could even put maybe a little bit of carrot or some mushrooms, and that would be good too. But that's simple as pie. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it down on this other burner so that I can show you how to make our macaroni and cheese. And we'll do that when we come back. Are you ready for macaroni and cheese? How about macaroni and cheese with a twist? Today we're gonna have something called sopita, which is a Mexican version of macaroni and cheese. And we're gonna start with a pack of large elbow macaroni, but the kids sometimes really like it if you use shell macaroni or other different styles of macaroni. You can pick. Even egg noodles work really, really well with this recipe. But we're gonna start with peanut oil in the bottom of my pot. on a medium heat. And what we're gonna do with the noodles, which is kind of unusual for macaroni and cheese, is we're gonna brown them, sort of like you would a brown rice or something. So we're gonna put these into the grease. And you're gonna need to stir them almost continuously, because what happens is you want them to be evenly brown on all sides. If you walk away from them, they're gonna get really toasty really fast, and then the other side's not gonna be brown at all. So we'll take a few minutes and we'll get these brown. All right, our noodles are toasted, and now's the time to hurry up and add our vegetables. So we're gonna put this half an onion, well, half of a half, so a quarter of an onion. And stir it in, let it kind of get fried. You can see they're really golden brown. My husband loves garlic, remember? So we're gonna leave really large chunks of garlic in there so that they'll float to the top and he can fish those out. And then my son can fight over them. And then we're gonna put green onion. We're gonna put the green onion at the very end because it will burn. Gosh, it smells delicious. Okay, so see how dark and brown this is? That's what you're looking for, is that golden brown. You have to stir constantly or you're gonna get it too brown on one side. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and put a can of tomato sauce, and we're gonna stir that in. And I'm not gonna put the whole can, almost the whole can. It's gonna do two things. One, it's gonna stop it from browning, but it's also gonna begin to pull some of the starch off of that macaroni and make a little bit of a gravy. So we're gonna just let that cook for just a little bit before we add the water. And while that's cooking, now I can go ahead and add my onions. If I would have added these green onions in that hot grease, they'll get brown or even black and they'll burn really, really fast. And this is gonna give you not only flavor, but really pretty color on top of your macaroni and cheese. Or the real name, sopita. I'll turn it down and tell you a little story. When my second to oldest sister was a little girl, she called this celipita. And Mama had no clue what she wanted because she kept asking Mama for celipita. I want celipita. And what she was trying to say was vermicelli and sopita, because remember I told you could use different noodles? Well, vermicelli is one of the noodles Mama would make. It's kind of a soupy macaroni and cheese when you use vermicelli. So when my sister was asking for celipita, she really meant vermicelli noodles with sopita. So that's what she was trying to say. So sometimes we actually call it celipita. Okay, I'm gonna put some water in it. I'll be right back. Trying to give you a good look behind this big pot. So what I did was I just covered it in water, and now I'm gonna season it and put a lid on it. And once the gravy is all absorbed into the noodles, we'll add some Colby Longhorn cheese. Salt, black pepper. Now we're gonna put a little bit of oregano. This is finely ground, so I'm not gonna put a whole lot. But you could even use an Italian spice that has basil and oregano mixture in it. But basically you just wanna put a little bit. You're not wanting to have a pizza flavor, but this I guess is what, you know, as a Mexican, my grandmother used to put in hers. And it's just a little mildness to the flavor, nothing overpowering. You don't want it to taste like a pizza. And now our garlic. I'm gonna grab a spoon and taste, make sure it's got enough salt. It's important that you taste it now before it's absorbed into the noodles, so that, you know, a lot of times I'll taste this at the end, make sure it's salty enough. Well, the noodles are a little bit different because it's gonna absorb that flavor of the water. So you wanna make sure that your flavor tastes good. And basically what you want your flavor to be is as salty as you would like it to taste when it's done. Oh yeah, that's pretty good. I think I'm gonna add a little bit just because once I swallowed it down, I didn't have enough flavor left in my mouth. So I'm gonna add a little bit more salt. The cheese is a little bit salty, so that's gonna add some flavor. How simple is that for macaroni and cheese? Okay, we're gonna put the lid on it, let it come to a boil, turn it down to a simmer, and let it cook between 12 to 14 minutes. Al dente is basically how you want your noodles. Okay, we'll be right back. We'll see you in just a few minutes. Before we actually serve our food today, we want to give it the good old taste test, just to make sure that we have enough salt. So, here is my spoon, which I need to dip something into. This is my cheating way. So, since I've already eaten off of this spoon. Oh my gosh, yes. Louisiana vegetables, you're just not gonna find any better. Okay. This should taste really good already. Remember, we tested it earlier before we actually put the lid on it to make sure that the noodles were going to be salty enough. So let's taste one of those. I'm going to turn it down really low. And that's good and salty too. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to add our cheese because, of course, of macaroni and cheese. And we're going to stir this in with what water is still in the pot, and it's gonna just make like a gravy. Lots of cheese. Colby Longhorn is my favorite. You can use a mild cheddar if you'd like, but I really think that you're gonna enjoy it more if it's not quite so sharp. And so a Colby Longhorn is gonna give you a good flavor without the sharpness of a cheddar. But again, make yourself happy, whatever you like. And we're not gonna bake this. Now, one of the things that I find interesting about this dish that I never even crossed my mind is my daughter-in-law has added her own twist to it. And my mother told me for many, many years that the good sign or the best sign of a good teacher is whenever her students supersede her. So I taught my daughter-in-law how to cook many things, one of which is sopita, and she actually adds fresh vegetables to her sopita or her macaroni and cheese. Look at that. See how good that looks? Creamy. And so she'll put broccoli or tomatoes or whatever she can find. And so we're actually going to go see what kind of vegetables we can find here in Louisiana that you might want to consider in your macaroni and cheese or with some chicken and potatoes. And so we'll take you out there in just a little bit and let you see what we have to offer here. Well, before we plate this up, let's go back to our food for thought. Remember in the beginning, we talked about 3 different words. One was green, which meant to grow. One was macaroni, which meant crushed or bruised, which I found interesting. And the third one was cheese. It meant boss, big cheese, excellent. It meant to find purpose. So we're gonna put those 3 words together and talk about our Louisiana hospitality and how we dish it out here in Louisiana. You know, a lot of times when we gather around our table with family and friends, it really is just to make memories and enjoy each other. But to bring the word crushed or bruised, I think that kind of lays a different foundation for another reason why we gather around our table or at home, or maybe we might go to somebody's house and bring food. And that is when we know that someone's hurting for whatever reason, whether it just be they're hard on their luck or maybe they've suffered some type of tragedy, we gather with food so that we can actually help them find some type of healing through that. So another purpose of the word cheese, another purpose for us gathering together is to comfort, bring comfort to one another. If that's not Southern hospitality, I don't know what is. Not that other people don't do the same thing, but I can tell you here in Louisiana, if we didn't do that, we just wouldn't feel like a neighbor. We wouldn't feel like who we are. It's part of our culture. So this comfort food of cheesy macaroni called sopita or in honor of my sister who couldn't figure out the word. We call it celly pizza. That looks so delicious. And y'all, my crew is starving right now, so I am torturing them. Okay, so we've got white chicken and potatoes. We've got some brown meat in here also, so let's get a little bit of that. And let's get those wonderful Louisiana vegetables, which is green beans. Well, green beans and purple hull peas would just be absolutely wonderful. Am I making a mess here? I don't know. All right, you guys. That is macaroni and cheese Mexican style. And green beans, chicken, and new potatoes. We're gonna taste it and see how good it is. When I was a little girl, I don't know that I can remember a day coming home from basketball practice when my mama didn't have sopita, refried beans, or tortillas. And that would be our snack or supper. So this is really a comfort food for me. And my kids, if they come over to the house and I have sopita, they're like, oh my God, Mama, I forgot how good this is. It's a really awesome comfort food for them. And the chicken, white meat, good and tender, vegetables. All right, you guys, I have to feed my crew or they're gonna completely pass out or begin to throw vegetables at me. We'll see you next time for more of Dishing It Out, Louisiana style.